Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. Today's question: what are those UN troops doing here? Coming up next on Deceptions of the Ages News. Welcome to Deceptions of the Ages News. This is our first segment of 2018, and I want to thank everybody that has subscribed. We have just gone through the roof as far as subscribers go. It seems like just a few days ago I was saying, hey, thanks for the 30 subscribers, but now we're almost up to 100. Really, we're trying to hit 1 million subscribers on this channel because we want to send a message to the world that America knows what's going on, the American people are aware, and you would be more aware if you were to read my book, Deceptions of the Ages, Mormons, Freemasons, and Extraterrestrials. Now, let's begin by talking about our topic today, which is why are UN troops in Chicago? According to a report by Lisa Haven, I'll leave a link in the description below, but they're also in Hagerstown, Maryland, and various other locations throughout the country, according to reports on YouTube. So the question is, why are the UN troops here? Now, of course, we can't possibly know exactly why we're here. All we can do is speculate. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why the UN troops are in the United States. So the UN has a mandate to go around the world and protect populations that are under duress, right? And let's just look at some examples. I guess the most popular example would be why I was in the UN peacekeeping forces as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, because the first need for a peacekeeping force arose out of the State of Israel, which was formulated in 1948. Now, without getting into all the politics of Israel, this and the Palestinians are right and who has the right to the territory, let's just look at really what happened. And let's just forget it's Israel. Let's just call it Land X, right? So Land X is suddenly filled up with people that are not from there, that are a completely different culture from the people who presently live there, and who suddenly claim a right to that land and that territory. So what does that have to do with the United States? Well, we just have to look at recent history to notice that if you look at a map of the United States, like this one, you will see that the United States is being populated with foreign populations. And now I'm not being racist or anything. I want to just say this. I cannot migrate to China. I cannot migrate to any country in the world, right? The United States and the democracies of Europe are the only countries that are forced to take refugees. China, Russia, all those countries that are communist states do not take foreign refugees. It is just a very fine line and a question of semantics as to why you don't call these people invaders, except that they are, for the most part, civilians moving into a location, right? So that's the key, is that they're civilians supposedly moving into a location. If you look at the fact that there's a country called India, which was invaded in the south by people called the Tamilians. And they basically took over islands in the south of India and started a war to take over that part of India. And so now there is a constant revolution between these people who occupied the land and the Indian army, and the UN has to mediate. And this happens all over the world. So what the UN does, and we just have to go back to a guy named Fletcher Prouty, who talks about the relocation of millions of North Vietnamese into South Vietnam prior to the escalation of the war. Because there was nothing that they could do, South Vietnam could do with these uneducated peasants that had been relocated into their country and were there for no other reason than to cause problems. Point number 2, I worked for many years in the Muslim countries of Oman and Saudi Arabia. I was there on contract, and it was determined, it is the law, that I cannot, as an American, live in those countries. But they can live in our countries. They can practice their religion, whereas in Saudi Arabia, if you're caught practicing or even speaking about Christianity, they will throw you out of the country. And if you are not from the United States, if you're like from the Philippines or another poorer country, well, you could have a very serious problem, and you could spend a long time in jail. And your family could also never hear from you again, just for speaking about Christianity in Saudi Arabia. So the second reason they would be here is they are here to be serviced, painted white as they so commonly are, and then moved off to another area of the world. That would be a pretty innocent use and reason for them to be here, I suppose. So again, reason number 1, they are just here being stored. Reason number 2, staging area, they're maintaining them and whatever, and painting them and getting them ready to send off to wherever they're needed around the world. But the third reason is a little bit more nefarious, as are reason number 4 and 5. Okay, well, obviously the first answer to that would be that they are using various locations in the United States as training areas and places where, I shouldn't say training areas because that would be against the Constitution, but staging areas where they can store vehicles and move them to spots where they're needed, where they'd probably be more secure than someplace in Liberia or Cape Town, South Africa. So that's reason 3. So what is the fourth reason they're here? The fourth reason they could be here, and let's remember the UN forces, they are a military branch. Are they here to protect a possible coup against our government, against our President Donald Trump? That could very well be. We don't know, but we know that because of the infiltration of the deep state by foreign agents and because of all of our information that is leaked out about our intelligence agencies and how they work, it is a very real possibility that the UN troops are here to support a coup against the President of the United States. And finally, reason number 5, they're getting ready for the Federal Reserve to pull out the plug on our economy and send everything into the tank, which will create massive riots, massive panic, and here is a foreign army here to, what are they going to do? What is their mandate? What are they in the United States for, especially in the case of a collapse of our currency? So we know that the Saudis and the Russians and the Chinese are all talking about going off the dollar, especially the petrodollar. So when that happens, a lot of bad things are going to happen to the people of the United States. So the last thing I'm going to say, if you don't believe any of this stuff, go watch the movie Red Dawn. Because Red Dawn, although it is kind of cheesy and it's very Patrick Swayze-ish, and you get your first glimpse of Charlie Sheen, it's a movie that really shows what is happening now, but in that movie everything happens very quickly. But what is happening is happening over time, over decades. And what the UN is banking on is that the American people are not going to wake up and say, no, enough is enough. And when Trump was elected, the world got put on notice that the American people are just about ready to fight. So I hope it doesn't come to that. but we do have a constitution, and many of us that you guys have served in the armed forces, you have an obligation to protect the Constitution of the United States. So if the UN is putting forces here, the first thing you need to do is contact your senator and tell them if they don't get the forces out very quickly, that senator is going to be looking for employment someplace else. And go up and down your chain of political representatives. And Happy New Year, everybody. I hope that soon we'll be able to talk about good news. But for right now, there's a lot of fear and speculation going on, and a lot of things that shouldn't be happening that we have to be careful of. So you guys, let's stick together. We are Americans. We are citizens of the world, and we Christians and people who have the same ideas about being kind to each other and creating a new world that is much better than the lousy one we live in now. Let's stick together. I'm Matthew Heines. This is Deceptions of the Ages News. We'll see you next time.